WebEx. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. Your entry 24773455549 is not valid or the meeting has not started yet. Re-enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. If you are the meeting host, enter your PIN followed by a pound. You have entered an incorrect access code or PIN, or you have not set up a PIN for your account. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.
Okay. Well, good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting, the 5th of October, 2020 at 7:30. The first item of business for the agenda is to consider authorizing myself to sign a document having to do with Long Island Sound Properties, LLC, a sewer easement. And Attorney Carey gave me a resolution that I will read. It's quite brief. Sanitary sewer construction operations and maintenance easements and temporary construction easement, either as it stands or with non-substantial changes and subject to the approval of the town attorney as to form. So I think we could entertain a motion to it says to the first selectman is hereby authorized to execute a document entitled Permanent Sanitary Sewer Construction Operations and Maintenance Easements and Temporary Construction Easement Agreement. And then the rest of it was either as it stands now or with non-substantial changes and subject to approval of the town attorney as to form. So we'd be happy to entertain a motion to that effect. Okay, moved and seconded. In a way of explanation, this easement is a desirable way to approach this. Those who have been following this know that we had originally intended to have an easement, but because the mortgage holder was unwilling at the time to sign a subordination agreement, we had to go the eminent domain path. We did go down that path to the extent that we actually approved a motion for me to start the process last meeting. Between then and now, the mortgage holder has agreed to subordinate, and after some extended discussions, we are hopeful tomorrow that, with approval tonight, that this easement will be signed and by the owner, and that the subordination agreement will be signed as well. There is, in consideration of having the easement, a payment of $30,000 to the owner, which is this. For those who don't know, this is the property behind the pavilion, which is a dirt parking area, and it would be the path through which our sewer collection pipe would flow from the Old Lyme Shores Beach Association through Old Colony, through Soundview to the pump station. Having this easement would save us the trouble of having to have the pipe go 3 ways around a large rectangle and cost a lot of money and cause the depth of the system to be much lower because it is a gravity system. So we're very hopeful that this will conclude what we have to do. Earlier, the Selectmen approved me to sign an agreement which has to do with the 3 beaches and the town of Oline entering into a cost-sharing agreement with these common assets, which are the collection pipes, that's plural, the pump station and the force main going to East Lyme. Also, I received authorization to sign the street easement, we call it, which is to grant to the 3 beaches the ability for them to have because they're part owners of the pipe, that the pipes going across town property, which are primarily the streets and a town alley, that would be allowed. So that document is ready to go, and this is the 3rd and final document of the 3 that when this is signed, hopefully tomorrow, will be all set. So that's the sum of it. I don't know if the Selectmen have questions about where we are.
Just a quick one. The special meeting that was held on the 23rd with you and Chris for the eminent domain, so that all of that discussion is null and void, is that correct?
I must apologize. It's hard to hear you through that.
We have a town order, emergency order, and we're less than 6 feet, so I'll try and speak louder.
Yeah.
The meeting that you had, a special meeting with you and Chris, and you guys agreed to the eminent domain, that meeting is null and void, basically, right?
Maybe if you put that on the other side, somehow between the microphone and everything.
The meeting you had on the 23rd.
Yeah.
That discussion for the eminent domain.
Right.
Is that null and void then?
If this is signed, that ceases to be important.
Okay.
That's right. Right. We had 2 possible ways of approaching this, and the eminent domain was the least favorable. And so now that we have accord on this, it's slightly more expensive, perhaps. We're not sure how much because there'd be other legal fees and so forth and so on, some of which we've had to sustain already. But this, I think, gains us the advantage of time, and the engineer, Fuss & O'Neill, as soon as this is done, they will be preparing to go out to bid probably next month, so that the work can be bid and scheduled. As we all know, Soundview is a very busy place in the summertime, and we had wanted to restrict work between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Mr. Murata wanted to have it from the 1st of May till the 1st of October. However, when the engineer heard that, he said, we have to have at least to May 15th, because trying to schedule this kind of a job and be complete by May 1, he said, I don't believe I can guarantee that. So a lot of the negotiation was to advance the date from May 1st to May 15th. On the back end, it's not really a problem because they start the work at the proposed pump station on Portland Avenue and work from west to east to Oline Shores to get the grade going properly. So this advances the time schedule, could be significantly, we're not sure just what kind of court proceedings, how long they would take and all that. So we think that notwithstanding the apparent more costly approach, it does get it done much more quickly. After no other questions, we can take a vote. All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Thank you much. The next item is to hear from members of the Open Space Committee. Amanda is not available, but we have a couple of distinguished representatives. I think Greg may want to come forward. We could rotate a microphone, and Mr. Dunbar, I don't know who's going to... You're pointing at each other, so flip a coin. Well, whoever would like to address it, the selectmen have been given a document which is a slimmed down version of the open space plan, the 10-year plan as I understand it. So whoever is the author could come forward and drag a chair up and brief us on it. And we understand that there is even a more significant document, but this is a summary, I believe, and we're happy to have it. Thank you.
That is correct. It's been a number of years since the Open Space Commission had last put together a plan, and there's been a lot of research, a lot of it related to open space and climate change and so forth in the interim. So I thought it would be really helpful for the community, for students and so forth, to kind of summarize some of that research so this could be an educational document. So the actual document runs to about 40 pages, and I made a point of putting a lot of footnotes in there, and wherever there's a footnote, when it goes online, there's a link so people can go and look at the longer document. So I hope that will be instructive to people. What I would do is to basically kind of go over the plan. If you have questions, I would welcome them, or you could ask a question at the end or Bill. But I wanted to start by kind of reiterating why open space is important. And one of the things that open space does is it protects critical habitat across the state. Connecticut is losing land to development, as most states are. And we're losing it fairly quickly. Connecticut's losing about 13 acres of forest land a day. And why is that important? Why are forests important? Well, forests are a very, very, very effective way to combat climate change. Carbon sequestration is the process where trees and vegetation draw carbon from the air, and they store it in their trunks and their roots and their leaves and so forth. And it's basically held in the ground. And that pulls it out of the sky. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. And there's been a lot of studies that show that forests can make a substantial difference in reducing the greenhouse gases up to 0.25% or even more. The other thing forests do is they're particularly important for a town like Old Lyons. They filter our water. When rain falls and there's pollutants in the rain, it stays in the ground. Forests soak up water much more effectively than lawns, and certainly much more effectively than impervious surfaces like driveways and so forth. And they hold that. And because it's not developed, we're not tapping wells into, McCullough open space, for example. It's there in a relatively stable environment. And forests also are critical habitat for wildlife. Again, America and the world is losing wildlife at a pretty alarming rate. America's lost something like 3 billion birds over the last several decades, and there's a number of local species that are endangered. And one of the things that open space does is it gives us resilience. So you have lowlands, you have cliffs, you have plains. It offers a habitat for a lot of different species to thrive, which is important because I think we're going to see migration of species moving north as the climate changes down south, and giving giving wildlife options gives them the chance to thrive in playing an active role in our ecology. The other thing open space does is there have been many studies that show it improves our health. I mean, obviously the most obvious thing, if you go out and exercise, it improves your health. The other thing it can do is it just kind of increases your mental health and your well-being. There's studies that have shown that. We have a land steward who resides part of the year in Florida. So the members were walking some open space, actually during the time that the state was quarantined. And I was walking the Champlain South open space and others. And I saw so many people out there in March, for example, that just used open space as kind of a refuge to get away and to just get out and kind of clear the mind and relax. Land conservation also saves money. That was stressed way back in '97 in the first plan. When you have open space, you're not getting tax dollars because you're not offering services for that land either. And there's the Farmland Trust and other studies have shown that when there's a residential development, it ends up costing the town a little bit of money. Now, I would make a strong provision that open space is not against growth. And I mentioned in there that we reiterated from the 1997 plan that it's important that open space acquisition not be used as a growth management tool to halt the construction of housing. And I personally was very pleased that the McCullough open space had a component within it that offers the potential for affordable housing. So it really was kind of a win-win situation. Open space also increases property values. There's been studies, the state actually posited that if you have land next to an open space, your property values could be improved as much as 20%. People like the fact that they've got nature and open space next. And finally, the Economic Development Commission's recent study showed that the residents of Line very much value open space. One of the factors people cited as why they live in Old Line is the beauty and the nature of the community. People were asked, well, what do you consider to be very important or somewhat important about living in Old Line? Excuse me, open space was second only to public safety.
Greg, I thought that in earlier plans of development, residents were about 70% of the opinion that the beauty, the open space was 70% thought that. Now this is 29 were cited. So
yeah, that again, we didn't generate those figures yet. I think it was an advanced CT or whoever did the survey for economic development came up with those figures, and I know there was quite a few attributes that one could choose from. So when you start, I don't know, off the top of my head, perhaps 10 attributes, it's going to spread the choices out over a number, but open space was number one among all the attributes.
okay.
The beauty and the nature and the feel of being in a loving community really was important to many people. One of the things that the state has been doing according to statute is to establish a goal of preserving about 21% of the state's land as conserved property. And of that, the state would hold 10%, and the state's partners, including the towns, land trusts, water companies, would hold about 11%. And we're doing quite well on the line. We are, if you add the land that the town owns, the land trust owns, there's some land that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service owns, the state owns. We're up 95% of the state's goal, and I'm pretty confident that by 2023 that we'll probably exceed that. And that said, it's going to be an interesting number of years to see what happens to the real estate market in town as well. And there's been a lot of anecdotal evidence that COVID pandemic has led a lot of people to leave cities. They've been looking for homes in communities like Old Lyme, and business operations have changed. I've got a nephew that works in New York City, and his office is closed, and he's told we may never open. He may continue working remotely, so we'll see how that affects.
Could I pose a question about the percentages?
Sure.
If we have the land trust, the town, Nature Conservancy, 15% protected.
Yeah.
Then the next paragraph says the state has about 20% protected in town, state-owned.
No, if you add the state's 662 acres to the other 15, the state has about 5%, so that would be 15 and 5 equals 20.
Oh, so that's 5%?
Yeah, roughly, yes. So the state and its state's partners, including the town and land trust and so forth.
So we're at 20% versus the goal of 21.
The state goal is 21%, so we're quite close.
Okay.
And then the most important, the key section of the plan is the open space goals over the next decade. And one of the goals obviously would be to acquire key open space parcels. And there's some parcels that the commission is looking at now. I believe Amanda has had plans, depending on her family situation, to discuss some of them at Friday's meeting. So we'll see how that goes. One of the other things that we want to do is we took a large percentage of the acquisition fund and used it for McCullough. So we want to really kind of carefully shepherd our funds and also to look into other options that might help the town acquire key land. And one of them is deep granting around this past year. And even though the state obviously has got some fiscal issues it faces, most of the indications is that they're going to do another grant round early in 2021. So that would be something, for example, that we would look very closely at how it might help the town acquire a key parcel. The other thing that the commission would like to do is basically ensure that the land that the town devotes its resources to for open space remains open space. And McCullough property obviously has a conservation easement on it, so that's going to be protected. And if we have to go through the grant, one of the stipulations for any state grant is any property purchased with state assistance has to have a permanent conservation easement on it. Another goal is to basically keep open space natural, to tread lightly. We certainly want to have trails and so forth, and we want visitors, but we want to keep it natural. Open space is not a park, we share the open space with nature, in essence. And McCullough property adding 300 and something acres to the open space basically points to the need to have a forest management plan. I think we've looked into that. We've got a member who graduated from the Yale Forestry School and has some contacts there. We have another member that went through the Covert School, and we want to look into that. The McCullough property actually has a gentleman who's lived on that property for many decades, runs a sawmill, and so we have the opportunity to basically, if it's appropriate, to maybe take down some trees and kind of manage that forest to continue its future growth. The next goal that we have is basically to really focus on safety. It's critical to us that people can use our open space in a safe manner, and we devote a lot of time and effort to make sure that the trail system is as safe as it can be. We've worked over the past year with the land trust to put together a emergency responders book for fire, police, EMT personnel, so they have maps of the open space, they know where the accent points are. There's very good cell service within all the open space areas in town, so if someone needs to be rescued, and it has happened, we want to make sure that they can get to them and get to them as efficiently as possible without kind of figuring out where are they. And lastly, we want to make sure that if there's an issue, that we tell residents about it. For example, there was an issue this past spring where a couple residents were walking their dogs on one of the open space properties, and they tangled with a coyote who apparently had some pups. So I talked to Deep. I got some advice from the wildlife specialist. He talked to Animal Control. We worked with Michelle, and we sent out some messages, and we actually put signs up saying one of the trails was closed, and for a period of time, don't go on that trail if you have a dog. And one of the points of open space is to enjoy it, and we want to make sure that everybody can get out and use it, as I mentioned, safely. Open space, from our point of view, has always been free. We want to welcome diverse populations. We want to make a point in the future of perhaps looking into trails where people with disabilities can access the open space as well as anybody else. We want to encourage youth to use open space. We've been working with the high school environmental club on projects, but we need to basically kind of develop a next generation of people that are going to be caretakers for the town's land. And we want families to do that. And finally, we want to work with all the organizations in town, the arts organizations. So we've been talking to the old linemen, and we'll talk to some of the arts organizations in town about maybe an arts trail on one of the properties. And one of the other things that the Commission has done is offer points of view to the land use boards. We've got a great relationship now with planning. I know that Amanda testified before the Commission about what open space would be appropriate if we had to set aside as part of the development, and we look forward to continuing to do that. One of the things that we really want to get into that we haven't done in the past, but was kind of with the extraordinary amount of time that McCullough transaction took, was to basically catalog all the conservation easements and start an inspection process to make sure that that land is basically being preserved in the state that the easement requires. And we would like to do that as cooperatively and as partners with the owners of the land. We would hope to meet with them and basically talk to them about what the conservation easement requires and why it's important that the land be protected, and basically go from there. Another thing we'd like to do in the future is to come up with some type of filing system. At present, I've got a number of agency files on my computer. I know Amanda's got piles on her dining room table. We've got files all over the place, and when the past chairman, Diana Edward Johnson, passed away, we had like 5 boxes that were in her home that we had to sift through. And we don't want to pass that on to the next members of the Commission. We want to come up with a nice system where everything is well filed. And then finally, one of the things that it may be appropriate to do is to review town ordinances. And there's one example that's shown on there. When the Commission was created from a committee in 2010, one of the provisions within the town ordinance was that we develop and maintain a list of parcels to present to you that would be appropriate for acquisition. And that duty had been previously part of the inland wetlands responsibility, and that was never taken out of the statute. So we actually both have that duty now. Maybe that's appropriate, maybe it's not. So it might be something that the town would want to look at to kind of clarify those types of things. And that's kind of the gist of the report. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to entertain them.
I think I've heard that certain open space in other communities, as they acquire more property and so forth, that I don't know who regulates it at the next level, but there are reports that must be filed, and you just can't have the property and not manage it. And I think you guys do manage it, but isn't there a burden to either the IRS or other people that the properties are inspected, and if there are conservation easements, they're made sure that those are being done the way they should? There's a lot of administrative sort of work.
I don't think there's any red tape or administrative requirements for land that the town actually purchases. As far as conservation easements, again, that's something that we wanted to look into. And there may be tax issues that the owners of the land would be subject to. And one of the other things that I didn't talk to today, which is that the town has roughly, I think off the top of my head, around 1,700 acres in quote open space, which is part of I think it's PA 490, that you would classify the land as open space to get a tax break. And there certainly probably is reporting for that. That's not really considered to be open space as part of the definition and part of our percentage, because that land is actually not permanently preserved. One can sell the land during that period, and I think there may be a penalty, or after 10 years' time, one can sell that land. So it's not land that's permanently protected. And I think there probably, I'm sure, Melinda or the tax assessor.
Yeah, maybe that's more for the
office might have some paperwork for that.
Maybe what I was talking about more for the land trusts, where it's a 501c3, and to keep their tax status, they have to be sure that they're doing good record keeping and so forth.
My wife has been on a member of nonprofit boards, and the land trust may need to certify that they continue to be a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think beyond the care of the property in terms of keeping it safe and having a steward and so forth, I don't think the town really has much in the way of carrying costs on open space land. Minimal. But our budget is relatively small.
Anybody's comments, questions?
This is amazing. I really thank you for presenting it today, particularly to its 5 points out of 40 pages. And you guys have worked really hard on this. It's 17 years. I have no idea. So thank you so much for working on this. It's really gratifying to see how close we are to making the goal. Because I had attended with Diana when she was working with the state on the Republic. So it's really humbling and really wonderful to see. I'm so pleased. What can we do to help you? What can this board do to help you guys?
Yeah, it's hard.
What can we do to help you?
More money.
Well, that's, yeah. Well, one of the things you've done is been really supportive. I know that Amanda's enjoyed talking to our first selectman, and I know that you guys have been supportive in our McCullough purchase and so forth, and we just appreciate your support for the Open Space Commission. And I'm sure Amanda will talk to you about money that she may need for purchases that we contemplate.
Well, I think recollecting when this all got going, the 75,000. Now you could index it and say it should be 100 or some other number, but the idea was that, just as you put in your paper, that this should be able to react quickly to get an option on something, buy something small, be nimble and do appraisals and that sort of thing. It wasn't to create necessarily $1 million or $2 million. I remember, I think it was Nantucket, that they took, I think, from a closing, they took like 1 or 2% from the closing and put it in a land acquisition fund, each sale. So they were rolling in the money. But I think we all understood at that time that when something big came along, there could be some borrowing if need be, if it was just too big to do through the budget. So if there was a large situation that came along, why, that always was understood. And I think the Board of Finance felt the same way, that rather than try to gradually fund a big thing and then spend it and then take 10 years to make another big amount of money, that if something really attractive came along, the voters would probably support it. Yeah.
I was thinking you might need some funding for the software that you need to do the tracking.
Well, in that regard, one of the things that we'd really like to do, is, again, as I kind of mentioned before, is to kind of work with some of the young people in town. Most of what we've been doing with the high school has been actually outside, working with them on the trails, beating back the bases and so forth. There are a lot of young people that are way more tech savvy than me, and I'd love we have a new volunteer coordinator, Andrew Fenton, who's on our commission that was just appointed. She's got a lot of great contacts in the school. I'd love to get a committee of some, I don't know if there's a tech club in the school, but get together with some of them and kind of see what they can come up with, and maybe we can do something like Dropbox or some cloud-based system that is relatively inexpensive that would meet our needs. And it would be again, a win-win situation. It would help the commission, and it would also give them some great practical experience.
That's a great idea.
Mm.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would just like to make one quick personal comment. When I first moved to town, Mary Jo came to our homeowners association meeting, and she said to me, "Would you like to volunteer?" And I said, "Yeah." And I've found it to be so rewarding to work on the Open Space Commission and also the Gateway Commission.
Good.
And it's been a pleasure for me to work and contribute to the town.
Well, we're glad you did. Thank you.
We're really lucky. It took us on.
Bill, did you want to say anything, or you're all set? Okay, good. The next item we have on the agenda is a progress update on affordable housing, and I think Mr. Fogliano may be on the phone. Is that correct? I didn't mute it, so let's see. I don't see this thing lit up with the number. Let me try again. Let me just make sure, because I think Michael was going to try to speak.
Welcome to WebEx. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. Your entry 22224734549 is not valid, or the meeting has not started yet. Re-enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. Your entry 24773455549 is not valid, or the meeting has not started yet.
See, that's the call.
Re-enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound.
I don't know what's going on with this thing. 4, 7.
If you are the meeting host, enter your PIN followed by a pound. If you are not the host, thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.
Questioning whether Mr. Fogliano is on the wire. All right, we could come back to that.
Is it working?
I just sent him a text. It sounds like he can't get in.
I don't know if this thing is hooked up or not. You know, you don't hear the normal background stuff. Okay, let's turn to minutes, and we can hopefully get Mike on here. The agenda says the 8th of September, the special meeting, and it should be the 22nd of September. So with that change, we can look for a motion to approve the minutes of the 22nd special meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to make a change from September 8th to the 22nd and to approve the minutes from September 22nd.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and we can have discussion on the minutes.
I have none.
All right, then we'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes for September 26th special meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, I guess I need to call for a motion to add to the agenda the minutes of the 23rd, the very next day, a special meeting. Or we could hold it over to the next agenda, but if you like, we could add it to this agenda.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to add the minutes of the 23rd of September, a special meeting to the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now it's a one-pager. I must confess that with cut and paste at the very bottom, I put in Selectman Nozel. That should be First Selectman Griswold, since you weren't hearing Mary Jo, and then at the very bottom it would be I did the minutes for the meeting and not Patty. But if we could get a motion to approve the minutes of the 23rd, 2020, a special meeting.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it, just because Mary Jo wasn't there. And as I say, in a way of discussion, we have those two modifications.
I have no other issues. Like Mary Jo said, null and void.
Well,
Yeah. But it still happens.
hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. May we then vote on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Passes. Very good. All right. In the way of communications, we have a note from Mervyn Roberts. Merv is on the Shellfish Commission, and he shared with us a letter which is to the Office of Planning and Development, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and also to John Byrne, who's the Director of Structural Design, National Railway Corporation in Philadelphia. He writes that my concern as a commissioner of an asset of this town is possibly of a toxic ingredient in the piling or concrete or paint or alloy in the steel or any other ingredient used in the new proposed bridge across the Connecticut River. We are fully aware of all the monitors of this proposed project, and we are also just as fully aware that when the power plant at Haddam was reviewed, the fact that the river flowed both north and south at Haddam and also that it stood still every day for a short period while it was changing direction. Since this was a power plant based on a constant load, there would actually be twice a day a period when the required water cooling effect and its efficiency would be lost. With all the engineers involved, this was overlooked. When the initial license ran out, it was not renewed. The plant was made idle, and to this day it remains idle, a multi-million-dollar fiasco. The Oldham Shellfish Commission is not against the proposed new bridge. The old bridge is overdue for replacement. Some of us are concerned that even a subtle change in the ingredients of any structure or coating might influence the chemistry of the water and our resources, the biota. We would appreciate a baseline environmental assessment, which would then be available to effect remediation if, again, something was overlooked. We owe at least that much at this time to our natural resource. Sincerely, Mervyn Roberts, Shelf Commission. I think we just said that this bridge has not had much publicity, and when I spoke with Carl Fortuna, he also said that he had not heard much other than, I think, an article in the Day some time ago. Perhaps Mr. Byrne would be more knowledgeable about this, so I'll endeavor to see if I can get a hold of him just to see what's planned. Certainly what Merv Roberts is talking about would be something once construction were to start, and I guess that, I'm not even sure of the date, but I think it sticks in my mind 2024, something like that. They might be doing this, but he's always been vigilant about the Connecticut River, so we appreciate his letter, and we'll see if we can get more information on this. The next letter I referenced was from Nancy Hutchison. She writes that urge you to support state legislation that would permit town clerks and staff to open absentee ballot outer envelopes as early as 1 week before Election Day. This would facilitate the timely counting of these ballots on Election Day, as well as allow town clerks to contact voters whose absentee ballots have been rejected for procedural reasons, such as neglecting to sign or seal the inner envelope. These voters could then either submit a new absentee ballot or choose to vote in person. Allowing this to occur would provide absentee voters the same safeguards and opportunities afforded to in-person voters. This is particularly important this year, as many voters will be voting by absentee ballot for the first time. Those who have worked the polls know that when a voter's in-person ballot gets rejected by the tabulator machine at the polls, the voter is entitled to return his or her spoiled ballot and receive a new one, with the spoiled ballot being kept and inventoried as spoiled. As a constituent who plans to vote by absentee ballot this year, and as a member of League of Women Voters of Southeastern Connecticut, which supports this legislation, I thank you in advance for your support for this initiative. I learned after the fact that this was passed, this legislation, and as she stated, the town clerks would be able to remove the inner ballot from the outer envelope and check for obvious mistakes, and they could be corrected, as she pointed out. And I think as of October 30th, this may be done. I know that later in the agenda we'll talk a little bit about the volume of activity that the town clerks have been, our town clerk and her assistant have been experiencing, and it's quite amazing. So this at least provides a little help in that regard. We have no appointments this time. Concerning the COVID, we have 28 positive cases, which include 2 deaths. We had our 28th reported last week, but still based on 7,500 population plus or minus, that's still a very small percentage. Dave Roberge, our emergency management director, has been working on the submission to FEMA of the expenses that the town has incurred, and this is for the quarter March through June, and it's broken down between labor, attorney, our state trooper, extra cleaning, the police vehicles, signs and signage, the PPE equipment, barriers and barricades, including some of the blue site barriers you see in Town Hall, and communication and public service announcements. And the total he has incurred and will be submitting is $102,051.45. I see 2 numbers here, but say we'll stick with 45. So this submission to FEMA will be evaluated by FEMA, and if it's totally approved, we would be entitled to 75%. If they reject any items, then it would obviously be less. The amount which is not approved by FEMA, and at 25%, I understand will be considered by the CARES Act, a separate reimbursement mechanism, and hopefully the CARES reimbursement would make us whole. That's optimal, but we'll see if that happens. Concerning the quarter starting July 1st through September 30th, I don't think there's great clarity at this point whether it be the same sort of compilation of expenses as we did for the earlier quarter, so the jury's still out on that. But obviously for July and August, we would still have a lot of police activity at the beach and other activity. So the number, while it might not be as large as this, with some of these one-of-a-kind type of expenses for not barricades, but some of the safety measures in Town Hall and so forth, there would be another larger sum. So we'll look forward to, hopefully FEMA will open the gate for that submission. And then following September 30th, and I haven't heard too much about that yet. So we at least have this going in, and hopefully we'll do well on what we'll get back. So that's that.
While we're still on COVID, you know, in our health district, we've had a spike, a pretty significant spike, primarily, I guess, Groton, New London. And have you heard or have you had a chance to talk with Steve Mansfield? Is there anything in addition our health district recommends us to do?
No, I know that we sent a letter supporting the health district getting the full funding, but I haven't heard anything. I haven't talked with them about other funding.
I'm not talking about funding, I'm talking about protection. Is there anything that our community should do, recognizing that we have had a significant spike in our health district of people having COVID?
Other than the standard emails, I haven't talked with him. He's extraordinarily busy, I'm sure, but we get his reports. I know he wrote something about school safety and precautions. I'm not aware that he's advised us on municipal matters, so no, I don't think so.
Okay, because between previous week and last Friday, the number of COVID cases doubled. Actually more than doubled.
In certain communities, yeah.
Well, our health district.
The where?
Our health district.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Well, I find that kind of concerning.
I guess Norwich was...
But they're not in our health district. So it was mostly, from what I could tell, New London and Groton. So close to Norwich, obviously.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you had any idea if there's a trend or anything concerned that he's...
I know that the governor had a conference call on Saturday, which I didn't get the information ahead of time myself, but so I think that was addressing perhaps on a broader scale, because there has been some increase in Connecticut. I think Waterbury and some other places have had some increases. I think the East Lyme High School is also closing because of a case, so I think the schools are vulnerable. If a faculty or some students contract something, they may have to, I think our superintendent indicated it might not require the whole school closing, but maybe a classroom or more, possibly the school, and depending on the severity. So I think there hasn't been anything of note with our school. We're in person. All our students are going every day in person, so I think it's remarkable that so far so good. So, but now that I think, just taking off on that, I think there'll be a flu shot. We have a sign out front that will be offered, I think, in the high school coming up pretty soon. And I think a lot of the drugstores are offering flu shots at no expense, so persons should endeavor to get the flu shots. It might help out on the flu side for sure. So. Okay, we can talk about project updates. The Soundview Sidewalks, we had some activity there. Want to comment on that, Mary Jo?
Sure. Our committee met last Thursday and are going to meet on Friday from Ballots again. We are about 95% done with the engineering plan, and we have some loose ends that we're working on. Some of the bid documents, we'd like to get a budget from our design engineer that breaks out the costs, so we can sort of get an estimate of cost per linear foot of sidewalk. We're still working on trying to find out if we are required to pay prevailing wage on the construction. We're going to be working now on our community outreach, more specifically with the abutters. We'll be holding a WebEx meeting, or informational session, I should say, on October 22nd. At least that's our tentative plan. And that way the public can call in and get an overview of the project and have Q&A. We'll be sending out informational letters to all the abutters. Some of the people have specific work that's going to be done not only on town property in front of their house where the sidewalk is, but on their particular driveway aprons. And we'll be discussing that in each of these letters with each of the homeowners. They'll be provided with the documents allowing our contractor, when we get to that point, the permission to go temporarily on their property to do the work. And again, for people who may not be aware of it, the sidewalk project starts at Bocce Lane on Hartford Avenue and goes north to 156 Shore Road. And then we're also doing the engineering plan, should the budget allow, for sidewalks also on the north side of 156 from Cross Lane to town property by the police station. So it would be a nice continuity. It would be another pedestrian project, a successful pedestrian access to the beach. So we're cautiously optimistic that the grant, the construction grant of $400,000 will go as far as we can go, but that perhaps when we get to the bid portion, we'll be pleasantly surprised on the bid estimates. But before we even get there, we have to finish up all this paperwork. We have to submit all the paperwork to the state for final approval. That's the DOT. It's kind of an administrative approval because it's considered a municipal project. And then when we get approval to go out to bid, which we're hoping this all occurs in November, that by November, that we can get some relatively good estimates or bids rather, so that we could get on a contractor's spring schedule and start construction as soon as weather allows in March and complete by May.
Very good, and we have a meeting coming up later this week.
Friday. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tim, would you like, I'm just going to make an aside, do you want to call, can you call out on that to Mike? If I give you his number?
We could give it a try.
Do you want to?
Yeah, let's give that, let's see.
Oops.
So it's going to be
Gotta give you his number.
860, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. I gotta clear it, maybe, I don't know. Okay. 860
510
51
3474.
3474. I didn't dial a 1, but I don't think you need to.
Hello?
Michael, we seem to be having audio issues with this speakerphone, so we're calling you directly to see if we could have you comment on the affordable housing paper that you wrote. It was a little jumbled, but try again. It seems to come through very broken, unfortunately. Are you hearing us clearly? Maybe we just do a cell phone on speaker.
Can you hear me any better now?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, good enough. Okay, I'd be happy to walk you through the report or answer your questions, whatever you like. I'm at your service.
Well, why don't you give us a brief recap on your document, and then we'll see what questions the Selectmen may have.
That sounds great. So I'll move along since we're in the suboptimal configuration here. But so I won't belabor the history. As you know, that the Affordable Housing Committee was launched in February of this year with an exploratory mission to wrap our heads around affordable housing in Old Lyme and across the state, and also from a legal and regulatory perspective. We're charged with reporting back to the Board of Selectmen with our findings and recommendations for moving forward, and the aim is really to lay the groundwork for better informed policy and strategy and planning decisions as we go forward. So, also, as you know, we'd barely gotten organized when we were disrupted by the pandemic this spring, but with a lot of help from Michelle Noren, we were able to manage to have a productive summer by meeting virtually, some technology glitches notwithstanding. Also, as you know, we're on a short timeline, and we're planning to complete our work by early next year and issue a final report, after which the plan is for us to sunset. And there's still a lot of work in progress, but there have been a few items that had surfaced even in the first few months that are time sensitive. So we prepared this update, which includes some initial findings and recommendations for handling those time sensitive items. So I can go on and just do a brief summary of the initial findings for you. Are you hearing me okay?
Very nicely.
Great, thank you. So on the initial findings, one of the first things we did is to dig into the State Department of Housing data on affordable housing, and that includes for Old Lyme and across the state, and there were no real surprises. Now, Old Lyme is currently credited with 82 units of affordable housing out of just over 5,000 total housing units, and that's according to the 2010 census, which is going to change when the 2020 census is complete. And that gives us an affordable housing percentage of about 1.6%, which puts us near the bottom of the state and a long way from the 10% exemption threshold for E30G.
Mike, may I ask you a question about the 5,021? Does that include the seasonal properties that are in the beach areas?
Yes, I believe it does. It includes all of the housing units in Old Lyme.
Okay, because still quite a few of those are seasonal and not year-round. So that's just, it's a fact, but it's in the statistics. So just thought.
I just wrote that down, Tim, and I will confirm that. But I believe it to be the case.
I think you're right in terms of the number, but I think there's probably roughly about 1,200 beach community residences, a number of which more are becoming year-round, but certainly not all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
I will confirm that.
Okay.
Good. And we look back actually into the data as far back as 2002, which is what is available online at the Department of Housing, and essentially things have been pretty static for the last 18 years, and probably before that, but we can't see without some additional digging in paper prior to 2002. So looking at those 82 units that we are getting credited for, most of them are accounted for by the two senior housing communities in town, which are about 60 in number, along with some assisted mortgages. And there are only 3 deed-restricted units in town, which is, again, has been the case for as far back as we can see. This is, that's not unique to Old Lyme. If you look across the state, a very small percentage of the affordable housing units in Connecticut, whether towns have met or cities have met the threshold or have not, the fraction of deed-restricted housing is very, very low, like 1 or 2%. So we're not alone in that. And if you think about it overall, as we look at that data, that supports our intuitive sense that achieving a 10% exemption threshold in Old Lyme would be a very heavy lift, particularly if we relied heavily on deed-restricted units to meet it. So that was one finding there, and we're continuing to work with the data and do some demographic analysis. But that was the initial takeaway. From the statutory perspective, you'll recall back in March and April, we did a review of the qualifications for that Department of Housing Planning grant, and in that process, we discovered the existence of 830J, not 830G. And 830J, which was passed into law back in 2017, requires all Connecticut municipalities to adopt an affordable housing plan by July of 2022, and then update it every 5 years after that. So, we put a placeholder there. I'll have more to say about that in our recommendations, but we did turn up that compliance requirement that had kicked in 2017 and has a deliverable in July of 2022, July of 2022. Okay, we also looked at opportunities in town, and we had the opportunity to spend some time with Amanda Blair, if she's still there. Hi, Amanda, and from the Open Space Commission, and we learned more about that option that the town has to sell or develop those 2 3-acre envelopes that were part of the purchase of the McCulloch family open space, and use that for affordable housing. And that option expires 5 years after the purchase date, which was September 2019. So there's just under 4 years left to exercise that option. And if the town doesn't exercise the option on that to sell or develop it for affordable housing, those 2 envelopes will just be absorbed into the rest of the open space. So those are the findings in a nutshell, and that brings us to our 2 initial recommendations, which are focused on those 2 time-sensitive findings we had: the McCulloch property opportunity that's expiring in September 2024, and also the sunsetting of the Affordable Housing Committee, which is expected early in 2021, combined with the 830J requirement for an affordable housing plan by July of 2022. So the first recommendation from the committee is fairly straightforward, and it's essentially to set the wheels in motion to pursue that opportunity with the 2 envelopes on the McCulloch family open space. The town already owns the property, and even though we found that there are some details that definitely need to be worked out, this is the lowest hanging fruit we found to develop additional affordable housing that we've seen so far. And even though it would result in only 2 additional deed restricted units, if it was successful, that would nonetheless that would be a 67% increase over our current situation, which is 3 units. So we would wind up with 5 after that. So the recommendation is essentially to either put a project team together, or at least start to size up what it would take to advance that project and move it forward to at least some decision on whether it's doable or it's not, and not allow it to expire in 2024 without at least working it through.
Mike, is there a reason you're only pushing for 2 of the 3 McCulloch lots?
No, my understanding is, Tim, there are only 2, and they are 3 acres.
Oh, I thought there were maybe 3. No, just 2? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So all of them,
yep.
whatever
okay.
the number is. But I believe it's 2.
Okay.
Okay, that's relatively straightforward, at least to forward as a recommendation. The second recommendation is to stand up an affordable housing commission that would maintain continuity and compliance and replace the current affordable housing committee after it sunsets in early 2021. And the rationale for this has a few dimensions, and the first one is that compliance issue, and there are annual and 5-year maintenance cycles for affordable housing data and plans that are going to need to be tended to in order to stay compliant with 830G and 830J, and that just goes on every 1 and every 5 years. There's the annual data review and the 5-year update to the plan after its initial due date in 2022. The second is that as we've worked along, we've discovered that there are really a network of town functions that touch on affordable housing, and those include planning, zoning, open space, economic development, and as I just learned today, there's also the Sustainable Old Line Group. And those are the ones that we've found so far. There may be others. So an Affordable Housing Commission could serve as a hub of that network and as a center of expertise on affordable housing issues, and maintain coordination across all those functions in all of the various planning activities that go on. The other thing that a standing commission could do is serve as a contact point for grants and other resources. And as we've seen, those are going to become available from time to time, as well as potentially partnerships with either not-for-profit or private developers, and also regional collaborations if they become an opportunity with our neighboring towns and across the region. The other thing we've seen is that affordable housing is a pretty active space, and it's evolving pretty rapidly in terms of public policy and practices, as well as legislation that should be monitored. And, for example, that 830J came up in 2017, and it's certainly not impossible that there'll be more legislation. There are discussions, we don't know the details of which, that are going on, and I would see another potential function of a commission would be just to keep tabs on what's going on in the legislature through our local representatives. So in the report that we prepared, we suggested a list of potential charges for such a commission. And all in all, it seems like there's a critical mass of work that could keep an affordable housing commission well occupied. And I'm not fully aware of what the process would be to set up a commission, but if there is a town meeting needed to do that, the January annual town meeting might be a good opportunity to do that. And we just wanted to make sure that this was put in front of you to evaluate well before then, so that opportunity could be taken if it's available. I can tell you that other towns do have commissions. Some of our neighboring towns also who have a town planner, have the town planner have responsibility for affordable housing. But most of the towns that we've looked at, and it's not included in this report because it happened beforehand, but it was nice to see you and Mary Jo at the last Affordable Housing Committee meeting, and you had heard from Tom Ortoliva's presentation that most of the towns that neighbor us on the shoreline and in the river valley do have at least a single point of a center of accountability for affordable housing. And as I said, some of them use commissions and some of them use a town planner. But in any case, that's a recommendation. And again, the committee is going to be sunsetting in early 21, so we don't want to lose continuity. So that's the initial findings and recommendations in a nutshell. There's still a lot of work going on, and we do plan to get you a full report with additional recommendations very early in the new year. But that's what we have so far. And with that, I'd be very happy to take your questions, but I'd also first like to take the opportunity to thank the members of the Affordable Housing Committee for all their work. And also, I'd like to thank the folks at Town Hall, folks like Michelle Noren, Vicki Ergowitz, Belinda Kronfeld, and Dan Beret, and others who've all been really helpful when we've been trying to locate information and in general learn how things work. So thanks to all the folks out at Town Hall who've been so helpful to us. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
I have none. I'm very happy with this report.
Mike, I know that if a commission were created, there would need to be an ordinance, and it would be your typical language talking about how many members, what the terms are, administerial things such as that, and then it could be some discussion about what the committee should be doing and so forth. So there are examples. I mean, the Open Space Commission was formed not too long ago, and so a little bit of research into how these other boards and commissions were formed by ordinance. We could start framing up something. It would take some preparation, and maybe a town attorney would help make sure it's done properly, but it would be a task that could be accomplished between now and January if we still have town meetings.
In whatever form they might take.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Michael, thank you so much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. You're right. When Tim and I attended the last meeting, it was apparent that you all have done a lot of work under difficult situations to communicate. So I really thank you all, and in particular your leadership as the chair. So thank you. In your developing research, have you had any? Have you seen anything about towns communicating or working together to meet their affordable housing goals across town borders? You know, I dare say regional. Have you seen anything like that?
We've seen that there's communication happening between the towns, and some of that we've initiated.
Okay.
Not a lot. And we've also seen, this is pending for us. We want to get in touch with the River Council of Governments, because they're acting as something as a hub for this too, and a clearinghouse for information. So we certainly haven't seen any real projects happen across town lines, Mary Jo. But I wouldn't write that off as an opportunity, and I think that's something to be explored going forward. I don't think that there's any legislative accommodation for that, meaning that, as I understand it now, you only get credit for what's inside your borders, and there's no mechanism that I'm aware of to share credit for affordable housing units across town lines. But, you know, that's something that could be taken up in the future, and if there's an opportunity for it, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't engage our legislators to discuss it.
Great. Yeah, that would be very helpful, because there's just, as you clearly stated, that you know, you called it a heavy lift to get 10%. I'm just not sure it's a reasonable lift even. But if towns working together could make the choices to mutually work towards that, we would stand a better chance. So, thank you.
Right. The other part of the equation there is demand. So we're trying to wrap our heads around what the real demand is, and actually segment that across three populations we've identified. One is the starters, young people who are just getting started. The workforce housing, which is where a lot of the focus has been up to now, and also on senior housing, and overlay that demand with some of the demographic projections and see not just what the state is asking for and what our capacity is to develop, but what the actual demand is going to be, and try to bring that all together. And that's it's a little bit soft right now, but we're trying to at least get a handle on that, at least from a directional standpoint.
Mike, one question. If there are 82 designated units, And 60 are the 2 senior complexes and 3 deed restricted. That's 63. There's another 20. Are those onesie-twosies, or where does that group of 19 affordable units exist?
Most of those are assisted mortgages, Tim, because both rental assistance and mortgage assistance count.
Okay.
I think that, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, I have to look them up quick for you, but I think there's 18 assisted mortgages, which accounts for most of the rest of it.
And so a number of properties which are considered affordable are not eligible because they're not deed restricted. We know in town there are some modestly priced houses, but they can't be counted in the count because they're not, I guess, deed restricted. So I don't know how you reconcile the fact that any town will have more units that are affordable than the statistic states at the Department of Housing. But I guess if it isn't fit in one of these restricted categories, it doesn't count.
Exactly, and the other thing that's been raised out of the Planning Commission is the accessory apartments that are out there. So yeah, we're aware that there are an unknown number of rentals and potentially owned houses that, but for a deed restriction, might qualify as affordable. And we're not sure how to get at that, but it's on the radar screen. I doubt we'll have a concrete plan on how to approach that by early next year, but it's something that should stay on the radar screen, definitely, Tim.
Yeah, I think in various seminars that one can go to through these CCM or others, you know, they're very emphatic. It has to be designated, and just because you have a number of units in town that are affordable, that doesn't mean they're ever going to be in the program.
Right, and it's a 40-year deed restriction that qualifies it for 830G.
40, yeah. Is there any commentary on affordable being, say, 30%, 40%, that sort of a ratio, as opposed to 100%? Is there any, do the people who are close to this think differently about those two concepts?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Tim.
Well, if one were to make a complex, say they put up a condo or apartments and it's totally affordable versus something that would be a mixture of market and affordable, but it wouldn't be that evident as to which is what. Is there any people, let's call it people in the trade, do they favor one or the other, or both, or how would that be perceived?
We haven't had any conversations on that topic directly, but what you observe is that some of the minimum for qualification under 830G is to have 30% of the units be qualified as affordable, and then there's some sub requirements under that where I think of that half of them have to be at the 60% threshold of AMI, and the rest at the 80% of median income. Well, I don't think I'm not aware that there's any consolidated thinking on that. You see some of the larger developments in other towns coming in closer to the 30, and then if you look at stuff that's coming, the smaller developments that are sponsored by the not-for-profits like Hope, like the Hope Partnership, tend to come up on the higher end.
Right, because the Hope project that didn't happen, the 100% of those units were going to be affordable, as I recall.
Right, and that's just anecdotal. That we haven't done any systematic look at that.
Okay.
Well, we thank you very much, you and the committee, for great strides having been taken here. It makes us much more informed and ready to go to the next step.
Good. Is there any?
I was just going to say, it looks like we may need to put a building committee. I guess that's a question I have for you, Mike, before we sign off. Do you see the folks in charge of the McCullough property development as being more like a building committee versus an affordable housing commission? Or a subset of that?
Yeah, that's my instinct, Mary Jo, and it's more because it seems like something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Mm-hmm. So it's more like a project.
Yeah.
So I see it more like the boathouse exercise than I would see it like the planning commission.
Okay.
But you folks know better than I do on you know, what would be fit for that purpose.
Thank you for that.
Great.
Good. I guess if I could ask you a quick question, is there any other feedback that you'd like me to bring to the committee? Is there any thoughts on the commission thing? We are concerned about continuity.
Probably there should be some exploratory discussion on what would be required from a procedural standpoint. You know, right now here we are, October, so I don't think time is a particular problem yet, but it wouldn't take long before it would be, and we could probably have a conversation with the town attorney as to what would be needed and look at some other samples. So maybe a small group to look at other ordinances and basically take a stab at creating some language and then have it looked at by council to make sure it is ready for the ordinance book.
And maybe that you could take the pulse of your memberships to see if there'd be anybody that'd be interested in continuing on.
Yeah, I mean, if a couple members could be charged with helping to work on that, then we could put together a small group and figure out how to draft the ordinance, and with the help of external help from the lawyer.
Okay, thank you. I'll definitely take that back.
Great.
And in the meantime, I'll make myself available if anything comes up on that.
Very good. Thank you. I'm glad we could get a hold of you in this fashion. We were, for some reason, the phone was not doing very well with this WebEx thing. Okay, well, thanks for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right, take care.
Good night.
I guess, unfortunately, that... Okay, we can resume back to the project update. The Mile Creek Bridge. The Mile Creek Bridge now has the side rails installed along with the guide rails approaching the bridge. The pavement has been removed probably something like 150 feet back so that the new pavement will line up with the surface of the bridge. So I don't know a more precise date, but I should think probably another week to 10 days that project should be pretty much finished. We'll get a more complete date, but it's really coming along.
I believe it was supposed to be paved this week. Did you say that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Could well be, and then I don't know how long it has to cure and stuff, but
The next day, but.
really?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think they're shooting to finish by either Friday or Monday, but they were trying to get
Oh.
it paved,
Okay.
so I guess that's all weather
Yeah.
permitting, but I think it's supposed to be nice all week, so.
Okay. That'd be wonderful. I know we just had requisition number 4, so
Yeah.
not a lot of gas in the tank left to spend, so. The Haynes Park restroom, that I saw photos from Phil's camera that the excavation has begun. They've dug out some of the foundation to be, and I think the rain slowed them up a little today, but I think now that it looks like there's going to be a dry spell, that will resume. I think everyone knows that Lime and O-Lime have talked, and the electrical service will be going underground from the boathouse building to the new restroom facility, and it'll be part of the boathouse electric, and that'll save having to have a separate meter for electricity for the building. In some of our parks where they're truly seasonal, we spend a minimum charge of $45 to $50 a month, whether when it's not, electricity's not being used. So even though there'd be an initial investment to have the underground wire put into the conduit, which exists, a good bit of it, long term that'll pay some dividends because we won't be paying electric bills in the off season. So I believe that project should be completed by Christmas time, but they're just in the very early stages of starting the work. Okay, the next item is the resolution that we've been looking at over a couple, 3, 4 meetings. We had some new versions handed out last time, and personally I feel I still have reservations about the nature of it. I think it infers that O-Lime has problems, and that, granted, I think nationally we do have issues. I think that this, at this time, is a political football, and unfortunately it has become fairly polarized. And I think in the therefore section there's a lot of process that would be required between the board and others reporting to the board, more or less status reports on what's happening and so forth. I think there are cases where organizations, I think universities have made statements that they are deficient in certain matters, and I think that raises concern in some regulators that fund them, and they might say, well, if you're admitting that you're not doing a good job, possibly funding will be suspended. So we have to be careful about what we say in terms of O-Lime itself. I realize this is broad in a way, but it does infer that O-Lime has lots to do here. So I know that the church has been very energetic on this matter, and I candidly think that it might be something for the church to continue if it so chooses, as opposed to town government. I think the selectmen are supposed to run matters of the town, and I think when we get into the area of the resolution, it's a bit beyond our scope. And I know it's easy to say, look, our town can't be 100% free of racism, but on the other hand, I think structuring a lot of mechanism here to monitor it and work on it, I think it would be more appropriate if the church would continue working on it. So those are my 2 cents, and I just think that I'm just uncomfortable with the whole thing, and really I haven't changed my mind about supporting it.
No, I agree with Tim. I don't like the tone. I think it would be better off with the church, as he was saying.
Well, I'm certainly disappointed. You've all been given different formats of the resolution that at least 20 towns in the state of Connecticut have supported. It certainly would be support for those towns also if we would go forward with something. I've acknowledged your discomfort, provided different versions of the resolution, asked for your input, haven't received it. I agreed to get you resources if you wanted some. I just feel that this is part of governing. I welcome the church's involvement, but part of the resolution was that the town recognizes, first of all, racism is a public health crisis, and that we would work with community groups and other communities to help make our communities healthier. We know that we have things we could work on if we had a framework and a data collection method and support, a toolkit, if you will, to look at how we govern and to make sure that we are doing so in an equitable manner. And that includes looking at zoning, includes looking at affordable housing, it includes looking to make sure that our educational systems are open and accessible. And if there is a problem, we have a method to address it, which right now we really don't. So I'm really disappointed that I haven't gotten some more specific from both of you, that you haven't taken the time to really look at all the different resolutions and you agreed to give me some feedback, and you haven't. I do feel that this is a part of government. I do feel that this is a national discussion, and to not take it up, I question whether by ignoring it, it's not going away. As I said last time, it's like trying to pretend COVID-19 isn't a thing. It is a thing, and it's certainly related to this. Where COVID-19 has really run wild in densely populated areas and people of color, they have higher comorbidity. They don't have the wide open spaces that Oldon has and that we've talked about earlier tonight. We should look to make sure that our community is open for people and affordable for people so that everybody is healthier. And when everybody is healthier, we are healthier. And by closing our eyes does not make this problem go away. I also think that by not looking at the economic benefits, that the resolution that governs how we look at our policies and data gathering will have an economic detriment to us. It will help us when we go forward, if we go forward with something like Halls Road. It will help us and guide us to what businesses, maybe minority-owned businesses, could be supported in Old Line that our population will benefit from. You know, our assessment is down this year. The trend has been down. The automobiles kept us in the green, if you will. So the trend is not good for Ojai. We have to be creative, and I think a resolution that involves so many aspects of how we live in Ojai could be very creative, could be very helpful, and could support our community going forward in all the aspects I mentioned before. So I'm really disappointed. Fairfield County, this is in March, had over 1,000 confirmed deaths. We're not supporting, we're not acknowledging, we're not helping these communities. New London, this was a long time ago, as we know, as I talked about, we had quite a spike there. These are our neighbors. They are having issues. By not looking at how we can work together, we are really turning a blind eye to the social needs of our brothers and sisters in these communities. I'm not going to stop too. I'm going to bring it up at every meeting.
Okay, turning to new business, absentee ballots. As we know, the town clerk has been very, very busy with absentees. I believe we have 5,933 voters, and we have about 2,000 applications that have been received. The actual ballots are starting to be mailed out to people, and so we're not sure where it'll peak out, but as I mentioned earlier, there is legislation that would help out the town clerks a little bit to get a jump on it, but it's been a very time-consuming task for the town clerk. They've enlisted some additional help to process the ballots, and they've actually been closing in the afternoon to handle the volume because it's a very meticulous process. So we'll see where it peaks, but if it's similar to the primary, there were literally 2/3 of the people voted by absentee ballots, so we'll see how this works out. Okay, we will now turn to public comment, if anyone wishes to make a public comment. All right. Turning to other business, I was asked by the tax collector and the assessor to bring a matter to the board. There is a regulation which an active service member is entitled to a full refund of taxes paid on his or her vehicle. And we have an active service member who has a leased vehicle, and I think the way it works is with the lease you are billed for the taxes once a year in addition to your payment, so you pay the combined amount. But there is a provision that even with a leased vehicle, that the service member can request a refund of the tax. So the service member, in this case, would be $524, would be refunded. Now the town would have received that money from the leasing company, but then it would be returned to the service member. So I think it would be appropriate to approve this refund of taxes paid for the service member on a vehicle through a lease contract. I guess it's provided for by law, so I don't know why we have to specifically approve it, but I was asked to bring this to the Board of Selectmen.
Tim, is there only one service person in this whole town that this applies to?
That's what I understand.
Well, that must be as of right now. I mean, there's got to be plenty of people leasing vehicles, especially service people. So would this go forward? I mean, are we just penalizing one person?
I guess, you know, if they're unaware of it, they don't file for it, I'm not sure. But I guess if you know, service members get a $6,000 reduction in their assessments, be it vehicle or house, so they can apply that to their vehicle. Now, with a leased vehicle, it seems like that is a little different matter. So it's the first I've heard of this, and I don't think I've ever heard of it even with the Board of Finance. So I can't say as to how many others there may be and so forth. But it's active duty, and in this case, it's a leased vehicle. So that's the.
Well, so the lease company gets the tax bill, correct? And they
and then they put it on your lease payment.
So they probably don't know if this guy's active military.
Possibly not, but doesn't matter. The lease company still owns the vehicle, so they're obliged to pay the tax. But because the service member is entitled to the refund, the service member has to file with the town paperwork, and then since the town's received the money, then the town would give it back to the.
So if he owned the car outright or had a conventional car loan, not a lease, he'd be exempt.
Yes, he would. In addition to the $6,000, I think active duty get waived the car tax on a vehicle.
What I'm getting at is the only reason why this person's not getting his taxes waived is because it goes through the lease company, not through like a regular savings bank had a note on their car.
I presume that an active duty would need to come in just as you do for the veterans exemption and file paperwork with the town saying, I'm a service member, I own this vehicle, my bill is $524. I file paperwork to have that tax refunded or not. Maybe they wouldn't even send a bill at that point. I'm not just sure of the process. So I think it's in addition to the $6,000 exemption if they owned, say, a house or something. It's a little confusing, but because this is a lease transaction, maybe that's why it's surfacing. But.
And does this person then have to file paperwork every year that he has the lease?
I'm not. The form is called Application for Motor Vehicle Property Tax Exemption or Exemption Benefit for Connecticut residents who are members of the armed forces. So this form must be completed, returned to the town, not later than so and so forth. The assessor may require to submit information verifying the motor vehicle lease. So I don't know if this has to be done annually.
Well, I mean, we don't even know, say he would get rid of his lease tomorrow. I mean, are these taxes taken out? Has he already paid these taxes, or is this tax perhaps for the whole year?
The paperwork comes in, it's completed by the person and then signed off by the assessor. What I don't know is whether one form, so long as they lease the car for 3 or 4 years, whether every year thereafter they don't have to do anything or not.
Or if they would get rid of their lease, are we prepaying tax they haven't paid yet? Will we be prepaying their tax, if you will, or we paying their tax that they haven't had it even paid for, should they give up their lease tomorrow?
Well, the tax was due and paid for by the leasing company, and therefore the bill was paid by the person leasing the car, the service member. So if they turn the car back, it's not like they're going to get a refund.
Because the tax has already been paid.
And I suppose if it's, you're paying in advance, so if the day after they get this and they stop the car lease, I think they wouldn't return. You wouldn't get clear title until that was all negotiated, I suppose, because you're paying your car tax for the whole year. So if they somehow got rid of the car and they would be looking for a 6-month rebate of taxes, that wouldn't be forthcoming because they had been given the tax already. So you're paying in advance for the year ahead.
Okay.
And so if they said, well, now I want my tax back, they could say, well, we already gave it back to you 100%, so no. So I guess the motion would be to have Daniel Chapman, who has a leased vehicle, receive a tax refund in the amount of $524.35 in accordance with the active duty tax exemption for which he's entitled.
So the active duty tax exempt does entitle them to this.
Mm-hmm.
Then we kind of have to do it, don't we?
I think so, but for some reason, Melinda asked me to have it approved by the Board of Selectmen. That seems
make a
like...
motion that we pay. If we're required, I make a motion that we pay.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. I think it seems sensible to me. All in favor then?
Aye.
Thank you.
Other business would be that I have is, you had mentioned that there's going to be flu shots, but specifically it is this Saturday from 8 a.m. till noon at the high school, and it's the old MVNA. It's a drive-through service, so people will come in, write a form of consent, and if they're adults, they put their arm out of the window and they get vaccinated. And I believe they're also going to be handing out masks, but drivers need to come with wearing a mask. If they don't have one for some reason, that one will be provided for them. And it's a 4-hour time frame or until they run out of the vaccines. And I had mentioned to Tim earlier, Dave Roberge had worked with the VNA to help them set this up. It's quite a big undertaking, and a lot of the Medical Reserve Corps that lives in Old Lyme is going to be participating in this, and they have to put in so many hours to keep their training up to date. So it's a really nice opportunity for our local Reserve Corps, Medical Reserve Corps, to support our own towns of Lyme and Old Lyme for this clinic. But I was informed that they weren't sure how much vaccine they were going to get, but it came in either Friday or Saturday, so there's a hope to have enough for the clinic.
And then typically, the nurse will also come to town hall for employees, but because of the concern for the amount of vaccine, it was felt prudent to do the clinic first and make sure they have enough. People do not have to show proof of insurance or anything for this, but they, again, it's for Lyme and Old Lyme residents, and that's going to be in the high school. I want to thank Dave for working with the VNA. I know he has somebody helping them set up this Saturday morning. And then they will help tear down the setup for the traffic and everything. So I thought that was, I just wanted to commend him for that. But I also want to thank the VNA for doing so much work for our small towns, between passing out the masks. We've had, I think, 2 mask giveaways so far. They may also do one on election day, I'm not sure. But then for doing this, and then, you know, just their diligent work for our communities and keeping us healthy. I really appreciate that, and look forward to people coming in and getting their flu vaccine so that they don't have conflicting issues with other things this winter. Let's get our flu shots. And then the other thing I had is, I mentioned at our last meeting, the EDC had also asked to speak to the Board of Selectmen. They sent us a note sometime last month, just as the Affordable Housing Exploratory Committee had. And I was just wondering if you'd had a chance to follow up with them about coming.
Okay.
Have you? Or you plan to?
Unfortunately, the last part I didn't get.
Oh, I was wondering if you'd had a chance to talk to the EDC about when they could come speak to us.
Not yet, no. We had these 2, and if EDC wants to come, we can accommodate them next time.
Yeah, their letter was September 3rd to us.
Okay.
We want to put on for next month, next 2 weeks?
Next meeting.
Next meeting? There we go. Is that okay?
Fine with me.
Yep.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay. It is 9:31, so we can say the magic words.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Off.
Yeah.
No, the meeting's over.
I want to have the $30,000 payment to the owner.
Yes.
How did they come up with the $30,000?
Old Colony Beach is